Mason. Welcome to the Make Life Rich movement. Thanks so much for coming on.
I am happy to be here, Sarah.
I am super excited to talk to you. I love your podcast. It is called the 1090 Podcast. Your theory on life right now is so refreshing, and I think it's a message that needs to be spread far and wide because, 10% of our life, as you say, is what happens to you, and then 90% is what you do about it. And I think that quote is so beautiful, and you can really tell that you feel every bit of that.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it feels like it's the other way. Like life's 90% what happens to you, and then like you get a little bit to decide. But no, just this idea of like, look, was it unfair? You didn't deserve it. It's brutal. Yeah. But what are you going to do now? Like it happened.
Mm.
And now the only thing in your power is how are you gonna react to it? How are you gonna respond? And I think that's a lesson I've learned, and just trying to do the best I can with the part I can control, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good quote.
It's beautiful. You've had so many cool conversations. I think it's like we've all kind of reached, I'm 38. I feel like my generation has reached to like a critical mass of just like not talking about stuff anymore. It's kind of
Yeah.
like our parents were like, "Hey, like we keep these feelings to ourselves," and now we're all like, "It's killing us. We have to talk about shit." Like no more bottling it up. And
Yeah.
I really love the way that you've kind of built this community that centers around grief. I would love to first talk about who you were surrounding the feelings of what grief meant to you prior to July 25th, 2021. What was that prior mindset and like logic that you had regarding feelings of like tragedy or someone losing a parent or grandparent? Like, what was that like for you before then?
Wow. It was very well. I think a big thing I should say is I never really experienced anything hard throughout my life, so
Mm-hmm.
that is kind of the goggles I had to look at the world through. That was my perspective. So, and I'm kind of embarrassed to say it. And it's such a good question, but before I experienced my trauma, I thought like you die and it's sad, but it's also part of the plan and you'll see him again. And
Mm-hmm.
because of Jesus, it doesn't need to be that sad. Like he'll take care of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then you lose someone. I mean, this is just me. Like, I don't like people handle it however they're going to handle it. But
Mm-hmm.
to me, like, grief is, oh man, it's so hard to explain. It's the worst thing, it's also the best thing. There's a weird yin and yang to it. And it doesn't go away, it's a life sentence. Like, the stages of grief, it's not like you hit acceptance and then you're good. Like, oh, like we're good, hats off, throw them in the air. We graduated our grief, like we're good. Like, not like I've been in good headspaces of acceptance on Tuesday, and on Wednesday I'm bargaining or I'm depressed. Like it's not good. It's very up and down, left and right, and there's no getting over it. You just have to decide how to move with it. But yeah, like I thought before I lost people close to me, I thought it was very routine and um, have faith. And I know it's confusing, but it'll all be okay in the end. And people tell me that now, and they're just trying to help, Sarah. It's not like they're trying to
Mm-hmm.
they're just trying to think of something nice to say. But when someone says you'll see him again, the example I like to use, which is weird and kind of funny and doesn't make any sense, but like if I broke my leg and I went to the hospital, I'm like in all this pain, and the doctor walks in and is like, "Hey, like we cured your diabetes." Like, wow, like that's great. I got a fucking broken leg over here. Like really hurting. And then like
Mm-hmm.
for me, you lose so many people. And sorry, Sarah, I might just be rambling right here, but
No, you're amazing. You're right
you,
on path.
you lose so many people, and so you just think about heaven all the time. And then like and so then you start thinking of like actually like okay, what is this place? Are, are we just there's no pain, there's no failure. So first of all, not off to a good start for me. Sounds like the definition of hell. Like
Mm-hmm.
what? Are we
Mm-hmm.
just playing badminton forever and it never hits the ground and we're just there's no trash talking? Like I don't get what are we doing? I don't get what we're doing up there.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't really it sounds great. It sounds
Mm-hmm.
awesome and having faith and hope and all that stuff is great, but like when you the feeling of grief isn't good. It doesn't feel good. And so when someone says it's good, God is good, it's going to be good, there's this disconnect, at least for me. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, tell me to do better, tell me to set a goal and achieve it, tell me to live for them, but
Mm-hmm.
don't just say you'll see them again. And that, like, that just doesn't, I need more than that. I didn't really do it for me, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's kind of how my perspective shifted when
Yeah.
I experienced losing so many people that I loved.
Yeah.
I don't
I
know what it was like for you, Sarah. I think that's such a good question, by the way.
Thank you. I think it's I only ask because for people that when I learn of their story and I'm like, "Ooh, okay. Okay." Like I thought I saw it and I do see it and you're open about it. So for me, I could talk about my father for the rest of my life. Like every minute that I have awake, I could talk. We were best friends.
Yeah.
And I slowly watched him die for 20 years, you know? So every day I woke up like, is today the day? Is today like they gave him 30 days to live once he was diagnosed and he lived for 20 years. Very,
Wow.
very unhealthy. Yeah, he was a fucking maniac of an individual. Uh, he literally showed me what strength and resilience was. And I didn't know how much I would need that vision of true, undeniable, unbreakable, like fortitude and grit for when I was going through like the worst thing that could ever happen to me. I love the way you say your max pain. It was the capacity of my max pain. And I thought watching him die for 20 years was going to be like enough. Like I thought there'd be a release or like a reprieve. And it was just the beginning. Like those 20 years were to prepare me for like the event, like the thing when it happened. But prior to him becoming sick and me not really understanding what grief was, I was just a little kid. I was 12 when he was ill. So it kind of just made me feel like the shoe was always going to drop. It made me scared. It made me reserved. Like as a child, it really did kind of evolve me in a way that was what it was. It was my path. It was what I was supposed to do. But I'm always fascinated about learning about how people's heart took over where their head was always in control before, about just thoughts of loss. Because until it's real to you, it's something that you're like, man, that's fucked up or that's unfortunate. Or like we can all take a moment to just be like, but it's kind of rooted from what I understand in like the, whew, thank God it wasn't me. Like,
Yeah.
like bless up. Like I don't, who wasn't me? Like, oh my God, I can't imagine that, but I don't have to, thankfully. So I'm going to keep going with my day. And for some, it is their time. It is that reality. And I think once you're kind of like touched with that, it's like non-playable characters in a video game and like the main character. Like it's very difficult to switch back to being able to like not know these things or feel these things or like believe in your heart that like, oh fuck, like everything I thought I knew before this moment was great and it was bliss, but it wasn't in essence a full understanding of what real life was. And then once you have that moment that's like everything's ripped away from you. I don't know if this was true for you. I'm sure it was based on what you went through, but the programming, it's almost like it gets fried, like the computer got wet or something. And then you got to give it days, weeks to cool off and like figure out if you're going to be able to get that hard drive back. And almost always you don't. Like it has to be replaced. I think it doesn't get spoken about enough. And I know that that's where the healing starts or never starts. Like my mother has not gone down this journey. She's very much trapped in a place of pain and like suffering that she'll never leave because she doesn't want to. It's like the closest thing she has to him, so she keeps it. But for me, it felt like a gift, almost like permission. Like you got to keep going. You're 35 years, like at the time I was 35, like no. Like he wouldn't want me to do that. But like my circumstance was so different as everyone's is. So I do like to try to honor that growth and ask, what has that been like for you? Because for some, it seems like it is life. It is your life. Like now, this is it.
I just connected with so many different things you said and have so many thoughts. So I want to talk about the golden Buddha metaphor because I think it's great with what you're saying. But I also had a question because like you saw your dad suffer for 20 years
Mm-hmm.
and then he died.
Mm-hmm.
This is a weird thing with grief. And you even said it like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. You're very anxious as a child. You're waiting for that day. Is this the day? And then he finally passes away. And it's still nothing prepares you for it.
No.
Like, I'm sure, like, you still, like, what? Like, and
Yeah.
you knew it was coming. You knew every day.
Yeah.
And the grief is so, and what's even crazier about grief is, okay, after your dad died, it's very real. Obviously, he died, but you don't talk about it. And there's a level to that because talking about stuff makes it really real, makes it
Mm-hmm.
very real, even though it's already real.
Mm-hmm.
But like for like if we don't talk about things, it's kind of in this realm of like little like yeah. But the
Mm-hmm.
minute you start talking about something,
Mm-hmm.
boom. And I think that's why talking about your dad or my wife or kid, like whatever it is, it's so hard. It's
Mm-hmm.
also so beautiful, but it's so hard too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one thing I've learned is that feeling of talking and making it real and opening those wounds, and as bad as it hurts, and as I mean, you feel it physically, mentally, spiritually. It just breaks you.
Mm-hmm.
But like that same spot where all the pain and torment and shame and guilt is is the same spot of forgiveness and love and healing and gratitude
Mm-hmm.
for what we did have. And that's just man, like if you run from talking about it, you're just gonna get the bad parts of the grief.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you can talk about it, it's still gonna hurt. It might even hurt worse, but
Yeah.
you're gonna get the good parts of it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's a whole lot more to say about grief for me. Like that's the one thing I figured out about my grief is
Yeah.
if I don't talk about this, it is going to control me and kill me and kick
Mm-hmm.
my ass and rule me. Like
Mm-hmm.
master of puppets, like obey your master. But if I can talk about it and I can handle it,
Mm-hmm.
I own it. I own it and I'm
Mm-hmm.
its master and I can use it to help other people.
Mm-hmm.
And that and the power of talking about it for me is really what changed a lot for me. It's still obviously really hard, but
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you right now, Sarah. What's today? Today's Friday. This will be my second podcast, and I did a public speaking gig this week.
Good
So
stuff.
I've talked about it, and I've cried about it 3 times
Mm-hmm.
publicly
Mm-hmm.
to strangers. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's therapy. So like,
Mm-hmm.
I've replaced podcasting and public speaking with therapy. I just need to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that to show you how busy I am. I'm just like that's how much I need to
No.
talk about it.
Yeah.
And if I go a week or 2 weeks and I haven't talked about it, like it starts
Yeah.
to go bad, like not good. And I start to express my grief in other very unhealthy ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to keep talking about it. So that's kind of where I'm at with my grief. I don't even know if I let you talk, but
No, you're fine.
Like, yeah, like I'm sure when you lost your dad, you're still like, fuck. Like,
Yeah, it was weird. But you know
yeah.
what I find beautiful? I, in finding you on Instagram, it was like a year and a half almost of him having been gone. And I'm sorry, my dog. 1 second. Sophie, please lay down. Don't do this right now. Lay down on your bed. Quiet. So sorry. 15
There
minutes.
you go.
Okay. Dude, she's pissed off. She's gotten so many cookies out of me today. I'm like,
Oh,
enough.
I want to get a cat so bad. I'm this
Oh,
close to getting a cat.
I love
I
cats. I
went
have a
to like
cat too.
this little cat like shelter thing where you can adopt them. And this cat, man, his name's what's his name? Salem. His name's Salem.
Ooh,
He's
very
a
good
black
cat name.
cat. He's so cute. Anyway, sorry.
Love it. Oh, but the thing that I love that we had the same exact thought. What does grief look like after 20 years? And for me, what does grief look like when it's sudden? The sudden scares the fuck out of me. I'm a planner, probably because of the trauma of my childhood, and like, okay, what can I do today? Like, it was just always me, like, trying to mystify the universe. Like, you know, when you're little and you're like, if I make this basket, I'm gonna go to the corner. Like, I'm gonna get ice cream tonight. Like, you know,
Yeah.
like you're like tempting fate. Like, please, please, please. Like, we weren't a religious family, but it's akin to prayer, I guess. Like, I was always just like offering myself up as some sacrifice to like get more time with them, do this, do that.
Yeah, that's bargaining.
Dude, the bargaining. I didn't even realize that's what I was doing. I was a
Yeah,
child.
I didn't realize. I always thought bargaining was like you're just pleading with God, which it is, but like
Yeah.
no, there's actually lots of different, very real ways we bargain that we
Yeah.
don't even realize that we're doing.
No. You're trying to cope. Like, it felt like the only way that I could feel even like the slightest bit of control, but I cannot fathom what it would be like for it to be sudden. The sudden for me, it was like I went through my max pain, which was knowing eventually he was going to pass. Also, he was a parent. So, like, the evolution of what was supposed to be was happening. It just was tragic and it took a long time and like all these things. But to have it happen suddenly is now my current potential new max pain fear. And to have kind of had like the differential like viewpoint of like what does that feel like just makes me realize that it's the same. There's no, it's like the degree of whatever happened and the way in which it happened is always going to be a different circumstance. But I find it very interesting we had the same thought. Well, what does that feel like? It's
Mhm.
like the feeling is no, is whatever you are capable of feeling, as you say, the max of. Like, you said it so well, and when I heard it listening to your show, I was like, dude, that's it, because it could go up but it will go down, and then it'll
Right.
go up again, and then it could go down again, but there's always going to be a new threshold. And that fear of the threshold rising, I think, is something people who haven't been in that space can ignore. But once you have, there is kind of this moment where you got to get really comfortable with realizing it could get worse or it could get better. But for now,
Yeah.
you are where you are. So, like, what are you going to do about it? Which
Yep.
is where I identify very heavily with 1090. I would love to jump into a week before July 25th. You were on vacation with your wife, who you had known since high school. You guys were voted, I love this fact,
Yeah.
voted most likely to get married, which ended up happening. You had 3 beautiful children, and you guys like were working your balls off. You're working your dream job. You're a coach. You're like doing the basketball thing you always thought about doing. She's a fantastic nurse. She's sounds like the sweetest, most empathetic woman and want to care for people in their hospice years, which is so emotionally brutal and so just like rib cage wide open, heart beaten out, just giving people her best during their last days. Like, you had a good woman in your life. That's a beautiful way to honor the medical profession, in my opinion. So you guys go on vacation. What was that vacation like together? What were some of your favorite moments from it?
Well, Courtney planned a vacation, and thanks for talking about her. By the way, that was well
Of
said.
course.
Well, Court planned the vacation because we haven't really had a real vacation since our honeymoon when we were married because we had kids right away, and we went from being a poor college athlete to like we just didn't have a lot of money, and then like for Courtney's birthday, like we'd go play kickball or whatever. Like she wasn't like toes in the beach type of like she didn't need a fancy vacation. She just wasn't ever that type of girl, but she's like, "Hey, like I want to plan a trip with you because we haven't really had one since we got married." I'm like, "Okay." And so she does. She finds the deals and finds the trip. She invites her sister Casey and her husband Alex to come with us, and we go on this trip. And it's just like you won't appreciate it like me, obviously, but like it was just weird. Like Courtney never plans trips,
Mm-hmm.
so we go on this trip, and it's great. And I just took that job at Nets on Fire before we went on this vacation. And on this vacation, a buddy who I just met working at Nets on Fire, his name's Wayne Ott. He drowns. He dies on a family vacation. So he goes to a family vacation in California, drowns. And so I get called by my buddies like, "Hey, like Wayne passed away." And me and Court, and we don't know, we're not Wayne's best friends. We just met him, but
Yeah.
like his family and him, like just such a great guy. So we're on this vacation, and I'm just kind of like rocked by this. We both are. And so
Mm-hmm.
Courtney and I on this vacation, we start having these conversations about what we would do if one of us died. Very weird. And I don't know how it's like for other couples, but we've talked about it before, but it's usually joking. Like if you marry again, like I'll haunt you in your like it's just the funny, I don't know, like just kind of like not very serious, but like yeah. But then like we started having like these real multiple times throughout the rest of the trip, like just kind
Mm-hmm.
of fell into these conversations. Um And so we talked about what we would do if each other died, and obviously it was everything you would expect, like
Yeah.
fall in love again and wanting to be happy and find a husband or a wife, whatever it was. We didn't plan on losing two kids and a brother and a nephew as well, so that wasn't part of the conversations we had. But and you know, I didn't need to have that conversation with Courtney to know that about how that's
Mm-hmm.
how she felt. But like looking back, that was comforting. And just that we took that trip and had that before she passed away. And I think about that trip all the time. And we talked a lot. I mean, you go on a vacation to get away from the kids for a minute, and then you just talk about the kids the whole time and you miss them. But like we spent a whole lot of time like talking about our future. Like we just had these new careers, and yeah, life. It, my wife was such a good person, and my kids were so innocent. My brother and Ryder, and like it's so unfair, and life doesn't care if you're nice, mean, tall, short. It will just kick your ass. It also doesn't care if something bad happens to you. It'll just kick your ass again. It's
Yeah.
brutal. It's absolutely brutal. And
Yeah.
that's something I've learned. I like you asked me that question to start, like your perspective before the accident. And
Mm-hmm.
man, like it's just changed so much. Like before the
Mm-hmm.
accident, I thought there was kind of like I believed in God, I prayed, I did all the things. I kind of felt like I had that security blanket. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
good.
Yeah.
No, not good at all.
Yeah. I love so much. I love in the show where they're like full circle moments. It brings me the most joy. And I only started really paying attention to these things when I was on my grief journey. But I love so, so much that another man's passing, finding you two in a moment where, of course, you want to be with your children, but like you have that bond of being just with each other in paradise. It's warm. You're
Mhm.
relaxing, maybe some like cocktails. Like you're just living the high life, even if it's for 5 days. And in those moments, I can't help but find it very serendipitous that you got to have those intimate, hard moments together for you to have now. I would imagine it is helpful to know that she would want you to be happy. Although you knew that because of the woman that she was, but to hear the voice and remember the moment and be in that place in the beach where, this was like a far off thing that in a moment of bliss on the beach, you're like, this will never be real. You felt comfortable to be vulnerable in that space of like, we'll be okay.
Mhm.
And then and now be in the space where you, of course, will never be the same again, but you can talk about it now. And if you haven't experienced grief, when you do, there's a very distinct period where there's no talking. There's only like throw up crying or like choking on your spit because you can't, like, you literally can't get the words out because your
Yeah.
brain hasn't accepted it. And then one day it does. And then you choke more because you can't handle like all the tears, the restricting of the throat. It's just like, it's such a physical thing that until you're truly ready and in a safe space to just start to open up and relax and let it out a little bit, it's like you need that incubation. It's like a cocoon of sorts where it's just yours. Like no one can touch it. No one can have it. Don't say anything. Don't look at it. Like look away. It's
Yeah.
mine. Like don't have this. And I love so much that just a week before that, you guys had some of the most beautiful, intimate, adult couple husband and wife moments together that I'm just happy for you that you got to have,
Yeah.
for
And I
sure.
do think, I think just going back to what I said a little bit earlier about how like the healing and the love and the gratitude is in the same place as the pain. Like looking back on that vacation, I used to just rip me up and I just cry and get mad. And now I'm able to, even though I still get sad, I'm also able to exactly everything you just said. Like, man, like we had it so good and we had it and
Mhm.
so many things to be grateful for. And, like having a kid is one of the best feelings in the world. Losing a kid is much worse. But also, like the would you rather have loved and lost or never loved at all?
Mhm.
I much rather would have loved and lost.
Mhm.
So it's weird because yes, losing a child hurts more than, what am I even trying to say? Losing a child hurts more than having a child feels good,
Mhm.
but you should still, and it doesn't have to be a child, it could be whatever. You should still go
Mhm.
for the child, go for the marriage, go whatever it is. Because even though the pain is worse, not having any of it is ultimately the worst thing.
An
Like give
unlived
yourself
life.
a chance. Like,
Yeah.
and as bad as it hurts, if God or however this thing works, like he told me and Kortni, like, hey, like you guys can create a life together, but if you do, like it's gonna go bad. Just telling you. We probably both been like, yeah, bring it on. Like that's probably what we would have done.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's just grief. I mean, you can look at this thing 1,000 different angles, and then you're like, and then grief's like anything else. You have to question it. Like, am I just thinking this to make myself feel better? Or like now, like, and then there's shame and guilt involved. So it's just like, oh, it is a roller coaster. It is a roller coaster, man. And sorry, I might be rambling again, but
No, you're good.
I think another reason why it's so hard for people to talk about grief or maybe just failure and obstacles or appearing weak at all is they're so confused. They're so confused. Like they're so mad at it and they feel
Mhm.
betrayed, but they also really love the person and trust the person. Like they don't even know how to communicate it in their own head.
Mhm.
And so how can I don't even know what to say.
Mhm.
And I think that's where a lot of anger comes from too, is you have these two emotions that conflict. Like they're both true. Like you love it and you hate it. And you don't know how to make these two fit. So you just get mad. You just get angry. And that's what I did for a long, long time. I just got angry. Like I couldn't make anything make sense anymore.
Yeah. It is violently incomprehensible. I think the one thing that everyone that I've met that kind of has like been in this place is just kind of said like, did you like, could you make sense of like life for the first few days, or like were you truly like confused? Like was your brain working okay? Like it could probably be akin to like the effects of a stroke. Like you're just not there. And like every now and then there's outbursts of emotion, and then you're screaming, and then like you're like punching walls. And it's just like your body is literally so confused. It's having a meltdown, but the meltdown is always there. It just gets less and less and less every day. And then some days it fucking peaks, and then it's less and less and less. And I
Yeah.
wondered, like, for people when they do have that moment where it does click and they're like, no, fuck, this is real. Like, I would go text, I literally would like try to text my dad all the time. Every time I did it, I'd fucking chuck my phone. I'd be so mad, like, God damn it. It's been like 8 months. Like, what the fuck?
I remember I had a phase where anytime someone would walk through the door, like Court, oh, it's Court. I'm like, oh, no, it's not. I remember doing that too.
And it
Yeah.
was involuntary.
Yeah.
Involuntary.
You're just kind of like, or your phone would ring and like, and that would like,
Nothing.
yeah, those
Yeah.
moments, man.
It's like diabolical of sorts because it's you doing it to you. But I think in a way, it's just like people would say it in the very beginning, and I'd be like, "Ugh, go fucking like go away. Don't talk to me. Don't say that shit to me. You don't, you're like, you haven't even been through it, let alone don't hallmark me with this crap. Like, whatever." But they'd be like, the grief you're feeling is just compared to the amount of love that you had for them. And I'm like, dude, go sit on an egg. That means squat to me right now. Like, I can't decide if I
Yeah.
want to jump off the building or
They're like
like
not
go
saying
console
anything.
my mother.
Not
Like,
saying,
what?
they're just not saying anything. They just don't say anything. If you're going to say that, you're not saying anything.
Yeah, it's a mess. But I I just love very much that you are so open in your story of telling what happened, just those things that no one speaks about. Like when I know someone's about to lose a parent, I'm like, hey, be kind to yourself. The first few days, like you're going to be really confused and no one's going to tell you this is happening. You're not going crazy. Your brain's okay. You're going to be fine. But like it's alarming how little we know about like what goes on after this happens, not only for the person that it happened to, but for you. Like, how could you possibly react? What like health problems could occur because of this for you? But I would love to hear as much as you're willing to share about that weekend of July 25th, 2021. You were away doing a basketball tournament. You're like doing the coach thing, killing it, loving life. You're at your dream job. You were not able to attend a family vacation that would happen every year, but your wife had decided that she and your children, along with your brother and his son, were going to go away for this vacation. So, could
Yeah.
you fill us in on that weekend?
Yeah. So Courtney and I get back from that little vacation we just went on to Cancun. And then, um, yeah, we have a family vacation every year. I mean, family's number one. We love them. And we always go, but yeah, like you just said, couldn't go because I was coaching this. It was our first basketball tournament for me being
Mm,
at Nets. So I'm like, sorry, we can't make it. And there was no issue. Like,
yeah.
yeah, no worries. We'll see you later. And then yeah, that Friday rolled around, and Courtney, my wife, was like, "Hey, like you're gonna be coaching all weekend. I'm gonna have 3 kids. I think I'm gonna just take them to the family reunion. We'll be back Sunday after the tournament." I'm like, yeah, perfect. And then my brother Race also lived in St. George, Utah, with me. So I'm like, you should reach out to my brother and see if he can go with you or carpool, whatever. So she calls my brother Race, and yeah, just like you said, my brother Race and his youngest son Ryder are going, but his wife and 2 other kids couldn't. So they're like, yeah, we'll just drive together. So my brother Race and his son Ryder got in the car with my family, and they went to the family reunion in Bear Lake, Utah, northern Utah. we live in southern Utah, so like I don't know, 5, 6 hours away. And it's just, so she's on the family trip. I'm coaching, and we're just calling and texting in between, and just the normal thing. It's all great. Um, they had so much fun on that trip, I was told. And and then Sunday rolls around, and they start heading back. And I remember we had a little apartment at the time. We had a house, but we couldn't move into the house for a couple months. And we had this little apartment, and it was me, Kortni, and 3 kids. And looking back on it now, I loved it so much because we just had no room, and we were on top of each other for like 2 months. Like, just, it was so fun though. So I'm just waiting in this apartment for them to come home, and Keisha, my brother's wife, calls me, and I answer it. I'm like, hello. She's like, hey, have a really weird feeling. Have you heard from Kortni yet? I'm like, Kortni told me they left Fillmore gas station like 2 hours ago, so they should be home any minute. She's like, yeah, I've been calling Race, and it keeps going straight to his voicemail, and I've been calling Kortni, and it's been going straight to her voicemail. And I don't know, man. So this is weird. And I just kind of reassured her, like, I'm sure it's fine. Traffic, like maybe the phones are dead. Like, I don't know. Like, we'll see. So I hang up with Keisha, and I call Kortni, and it goes straight to her voicemail, which is very weird. And I call Ray straight to his voicemail. I'm like, that is weird. And then my phone rings. Unknown number. So I answer it. He's like, hey, this is Dr. So and so from Fillmore, Utah. So immediately, I mean, after I just talked to Keisha and then this, like, I'm kind of like, my head's kind of already in this space of like, okay. So, I mean, the worst case scenario in my head was, okay, Race and Kortni are hurt. That's why they're not answering the phone. He's calling me from a hospital, so they're probably there at the hospital, and the kids are in the hallway, probably freaking out. So we need to get over there. So I put the phone on speaker, and I text Keisha, like, there's been a car accident. That's why they're not answering. Come pick me up, and we'll go to Fillmore. Because I didn't even have my car. I had my motorcycle, and so I'm like, I can't take Keisha, so come get me. So Keisha's on her way, and the doctor keeps talking, and he's asking me a lot of questions. He's about to tell me the worst news ever, so I think he's just making sure he had the right guy, or I don't know. But he's asking me questions. I'm like, dude, what is going on?
Yeah.
He's like, there's been a terrible car accident. Your car was in it. Everyone's dead except one person. And so I immediately fall to the ground. And it's kind of like all the stages of grief at once. Like, I'm screaming. I remember screaming, crying, but then going silent. I remember being like the shocks there. You're like out of body, but also very much in the body. I don't even know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know. But and honestly, to be honest with you, that's kind of how it's been ever since. Like, you just
Yeah.
skip from one. You just go from bargaining, denial, anger, depression, etc. You just spin.
Yeah.
I think that's what I was doing. I was just kind of spinning through all of them, or maybe I was stuck in all of them at the same time. It was not good. And I remember like being in denial too. I remember asking the guy, like, you're kidding, like, this, you're joking. He's like, no. Um, and I remember I'm laying on the ground, and I just hear one survivor kind of echo in my head, like, one survivor, one survivor. And through all like this chaos, every once in a while, like, this survivor guy would kind of step in, and he'd be like, Mace, like, you got to pick up the phone. You need to let people know, like, we got to keep going here. So I pick up the phone, and they're like, the survivor's a 3-year-old. So I remember falling back to the ground and like trying to process this. So Kortni, I mean, you said it. We were high school sweethearts, and you could talk about your dad forever. I could talk about Kortni forever, and I have. Like, I've done podcasts just on her. She's amazing. But she's gone. And the car accident was so brutal that they're like, you can't see her, but you can see her hand if you want to see her hand. I can't do that. So my life's gone. Like, met her when I was 15, never dated another girl. Like, so she's gone. So I'm dealing with that. And then Riggins is gone. And I said it earlier, but I mean, having a kid's great. Losing a kid that's gotta be, I don't know if there's something worse than that
Yeah.
feeling, this feeling. Um, and then my brother Ace is gone and Ryder's gone. But 3-year-old, that could mean my son Blue, who's just turned 4, or he's actually about to turn 4. So he's currently 3. He's 4 days away from turning 4.
Oh,
Or maybe it's Frankie, like Frankie's 2, but could be, I don't know. And, I've talked about my story so many times, but like, there's a very good chance that whoever called me is just like nailing, like just doing a great job. And I'm just not hearing it good. You know what I mean? So like,
yeah.
I don't even know. I'd love to actually hear that conversation maybe. Like,
Yeah.
because there's parts of that moment that like, I don't even remember.
Yeah.
My niece Faith, so Race's daughter, she told me one time, like a year later, she's like, I have a voicemail from you on that night. Like, you called me and you're just screaming bloody murder. Like, you're just screaming. And I have no recollection of it. And so I'm like, I wonder how many of those are out there. Like, don't even remember that. But then
Yeah.
other parts are so like vivid.
Vivid. Yeah.
And so I remember telling the guy, I'm like, I think you have my daughter. Because I'm also worried that the one survivor is not in my car. Like, I'm trying to
Yeah.
imagine this thing. So there's multiple cars. I'm like, is the one survivor in a different car? Like,
Yeah.
I don't even know. So like, I think you have my daughter Frankie, and I think I thought that because Frankie was young enough to have the backwards facing car seat. So in my
Hmm.
mind, I'm like, well, maybe it was Frankie because she was facing the other way. And they're like, no, this is a boy. He has blonde hair, blue eyes. And I remember, for some reason, I don't know if it was hope or what it was, but like
Hmm.
the minute I thought it was Frankie,
So sorry.
like no, the minute I thought it was Frankie, like it was Frankie. You know what I mean? Like I just like it's Frankie. And then he's like, which meant Blue is dead. And so when this guy told me, he's like, this kid has blonde hair, blue eyes, like I kind of had through all this fucking mess of information I'm getting. It was like a little flicker of like, oh, like Blue's actually alive. I remember having like almost like a parachute opened and just slowed my grief for a second. Like, oh, like some good news. And then like I remembered like, well, yeah, but now that meant Frankie was gone. And so that like that was hard. Um and then and then the guy says we're life lighting him. And I said, okay, I'll be there in 4 hours. How long does the life flight take? He's like 45 minutes. I'm like, okay. So and then the guy said, I need to get a hold of Keisha Sawyer. I'm like, well, Keisha's coming over to my house, but I'm not gonna. This conversation for me, anyway, has been very confusing. So I remember telling him, I'm like, I can tell her, but I'm not gonna tell her unless we know for sure everyone else is dead. And he's like, yeah, everyone else is dead. I'm like, okay. So hung hung up with him, and I fall to the ground again. And I remember I was so nauseous. I don't remember if I actually threw up or if I don't. I'm just sick and I'm crying. And the survivors guy is like, we just got to wait for Keisha, and then you're gonna tell her, and that's all I could handle at that time. Like, we'll figure it out when we get to that point, but we just got to wait for Keisha. And then the survivor guy is like, well, she doesn't know where you live because we're in this apartment. And so
Mm.
she knows where the apartment complex is, but not the specific like apartment number.
Yeah.
And like I can't make a text or a call. I'm like, so I'm like, you just have to get to the main road and then you can see her, you can flag her down. So I leave my apartment and I'm screaming and I'm crying, and I'd make it 20, 30, 50 feet and I'd fall and just slap the pavement and get back up. And I did that a couple times. Then I finally get to the main road and I fall.
Yeah.
And I'm just on the sidewalk, slapping my head, slap.
Yeah.
I don't know what I look like a man possessed, probably, like not good. And at this point, neighbors come out, like swarming me, like, "What are you doing?" I think I told them what was going on. I'm not sure. I remember they just wanted to keep me out of the road. They're like, I just remember hearing them talk to each other, like, let's just make sure he doesn't go on the road. And then I see Keisha's car. And so then I go right in the middle of the road. And I flag her down and I hop in the back of her car. And it's her and her daughter, Faith. And they see me. And so they know, like, okay, not good. And so I tell them, everyone, there's been a car accident. Everyone's dead except maybe Blue. And my niece Faith lets out this shrieking scream, like a scream, but it was just a terrible sound. And
Mm-hmm.
she opens the door and just starts running. She just takes off running.
Yeah.
And I'm like crying, and then I turn to Keisha and I see Keisha's head drop, and I remember her. I think her first words that I heard were my precious rider. Um, And then I call my parents and I tell them, like, I need you guys to go to the hospital because they're life flighting Blue. I hope it's Blue. And if it is Blue, like, I want someone there for him. So
Yeah.
can you go to the hospital? I'll be there in 4 hours. They're like, yeah. um, and then I call my buddy Jake to drive me. And it was me, Keisha, and Faith in this parking lot, just making phone calls. And I had to tell Keisha, I'm like, I have to leave you. Um, I have to go. I feel terrible about. I mean, this is Keisha, my sister, basically, and in her worst moment, and I have to leave. So I leave her with strangers, and they're just kind of doing what they can. My buddy Jake picks me up, and I start driving to the hospital, hoping it's Blue, and have to drive through the car accident to get to the hospital. We finally get to the hospital, and um, it's Blue, and um, that's why I'm still here. I remember I think I told Jake, my buddy driving me, because I was still unsure if it was even him or not. And I remember telling him, like, hey, like, if this isn't Blue or if he's not alive, like, I'm gonna kill myself. Um, and he just said no, no, no. He just kind of kept saying no. But it was Blue, and he was in a neck brace, but it's just for like precautionary reasons. He had some deep cuts on his head. He had a fractured hand. We spent one night together in the hospital, and then we walked out the next day into the 90%, I guess you would say, to the rest of our life. So
Yes.
that was the death of the first me and the rebirth of this guy and the combination of both those guys, however you want to look at it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Whew. Bless them. Bless you. Bless your
yeah,
son. It's it's so amazing what the human spirit can endure. And I think one of the biggest shames for me, it was realizing in grief that you only realize it through the hard moments, and you can't fathom how strong you are until you have to be. And I wonder if in that moment of recognizing it was true, like Blue was alive, you were looking at him, he was in essence, spared, unharmed. did you feel like that inner worth and value for yourself kind of come back a bit again because you knew like no, my purpose here is not done. Like I have my
Yeah.
son, we have to get through this. Like this is what we're going to do now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where. I mean, it's so. I mean, everyone says it. Like, what's your why? You need a why. But
Hmm.
like, he was my like, and it's weird because like the pain of losing all them is just it's just too much. Honestly, I don't even know if my brain fully. I think my brain just does a good job protecting itself, and like I handle it in small amounts. Like I don't even know if I'm able to really grasp this thing, at
Yeah.
least not yet.
Yeah.
But the love I have for Blue, like, gets me through all of that pain. Like, damn, like that's pretty amazing. Like, pretty amazing. Um, I think a parent loving a kid, I think that that might be the only connection thing that would keep me going. Maybe like I don't know, like losing two kids. I just yeah, I can go on. I don't even know what I'm trying to say anymore. But
I
Blue's
understand.
Blue's the hero. He's my hero,
Yeah.
and I'm so grateful for him. Obviously, but I mean, right after the accident, like I mean, people referred to Blue as a miracle, which is fine. But like, nothing about that event was a miracle.
Mm-mm.
So like I don't like that word at all. Like it was a massacre. It was terrible. I mean, good things happened within the storm. Like Blue did survive, but like, and it wasn't just my family either. Like
Mm-mm.
8 people died total. Other people got fucked up. Like this impacted a lot of people. It's not like it was just the Sawyer family, but like, yeah, Blue. You got to find a why, a purpose, because the happiness. Okay, back to your question. Before the accident, I thought the whole purpose of life, like the whole thing, was to be happy, like happiness. Like let's be happy. And then I'm like, like that's just an emotion, like any other emotion. Ain't like it's gonna come and go. No one's borderline baseline happy. No
Mm-hmm.
one's if they are, they're lying. No one's just happy. But you have moments, maybe even years of happiness. But like
Mm-hmm.
happiness is going to come and go, but I think purpose, like having a purpose,
Mm-hmm.
that's what's going to get you through stuff. And you'll find happiness doing your purpose, and you'll also find
Mm-hmm.
anger and disappointment and all the other things too. But
Yeah.
you need, I think you need to find that's what I got.
Yeah.
As bad as it's been for me, I've had a very strong, clear cut purpose.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's beautiful. I love what you've said in the past about the event itself didn't have a purpose, but what you're doing with the pain has a purpose. I think it's easy for people to assign labels and destinies to things that happen if they're like on the fringe of it and it's not really affecting them, but they're trying to wrap this thing that they can't think about in a little bow to like put it away. It's like, okay, well, he survived. Let's be thankful. He's a miracle. Like, let's move away from this, as you said, massacre. And I think there comes like a very distinct moment where that veil was not lifted. It was like burned. It's gone forever. And to know that like you're never going to find purpose for why that thing happened. Like there's no definition of like this one thing culminating all of those people's lives and how that affected you and your sister-in-law and just all the people that were connected to this, but it did give you the purpose, fortitude, and just like empathy to be able to take this and make something of it that is now helping thousands of people. I love that so much for you because for me, it lets me understand that you're at least in a place where you're not giving up. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people with grief no matter what it stems from, can give up. And even if that is a complacent life because, you got divorced and it ruined your entire reality, and like, or you lost a child and you're still elder parents and like your world doesn't make sense anymore. To give up and to give in, to me, is almost sadder than the occasion of what has happened, because it didn't claim just one, it claimed two. And for you to have such unfathomable things happen in a flick of a switch, to where your life now is still, your reality is shifting to like, does this make sense? Oh yeah, it does. That this fucking blows. This is my reality. Oh, did this really happen? Like, that doesn't take place unless you're turning into the wind. That reference that you give so beautifully about the difference between buffaloes and cows, like you turning into those moments that others would succumb to or give up when coming against. For me, I'm just so thankful you took this direction. I'm so thankful you're sharing this incredibly fathoms deep wound and allowing others to just get, if only a speck of understanding, that you have to live your life to the fullest. You have to take what you've been given and do something with it. You cannot succumb to the long, dark night. Like, you are here, you are alive, you are lucky for it. What are you going to do with it? Like, you have like one wild, precious life. What the fuck are you going to do with it? And I think it's coming from someone like yourself that has been to the pits of hell while here, where others haven't had that reality. You make it difficult for others living that life that you were living before this tragedy happened to you. Make it very difficult and very disrespectful for them to look away. And I, for one, am very thankful for that, because I think ultimately us embracing our pain and the occurrences of suffering in a manner that we allow ourselves to live out loud with, even the uncomfortable parts, is where this change will start to take place. So there's less suffering in silence. There's less suicides because of things like this, where people don't have an outlet and the pain is too much and they don't have a purpose because they are alone. Like, it's just, I'm not glorifying what you're doing by any means. I know it's very personal to you, but it is powerful, and it's based off of the purest thing there is, which is that total understanding of what love is. And you are so aware.
Well, thanks for all the kind words. The way I see it is like I just don't really have a lot of. This is like my only option. I don't. You don't really have a choice.
Yeah.
So it's like it's so cool. You keep going. It's like yeah, but like,
Yeah.
is there another thing I can do? Like, yeah,
Yeah.
this is it. But like, it's funny because a lot of a lot of public speaking things I do. Sometimes there's like a speaker before, and they're just talking, and the crowd's loving it, and I just feel so disconnected. Like, what the fuck are you guys talking about? What are you guys talking about? I remember like this one guy is like talking about how great rock bottom is. It was like a good foundation or whatever. And in my mind, like, there's really no rock bottom.
Mm-mm.
Like, it can always get fucking worse. Like, even my story, like, Blue could, like, not sure what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, everything happens for a reason and there's lessons learned. And I, on paper, yeah. And maybe, like, for 90% of the problems people deal with, like, sure, like, okay. But, like, there's some things where, like, this stuff doesn't relate to people. At least not to, like, I don't know. Are we are there kids around and we're pretending Santa's here? I don't what game are we playing right now? I don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying I'm not a great I'm not great. I'm not better than the other guy. I'm just saying like I feel
Reality.
weird. And the
Mm-hmm.
way I see it is listen, car accident with my family. If I just lay in bed, complain, pour me, why me, drink myself to death, which is what I was doing the first
Mm-hmm.
year. I just couldn't even talk about them, look
Yeah.
at pictures of them. And now I'm like, on the other side of the spectrum, like Mason, shut up. Like we know the story. Like I can't stop talking about it.
Yeah.
But like, okay, if I would have done that, That's what the car accident would have meant. That's what the car accident would have been for. And here's the other thing, like a lot of people handling adversity, that is what they do. But we don't talk about them. We don't bring them up in motivational speaking. So what are we actually saying? This person's dad died or family died so he could become an alcoholic and kill
Mhm.
himself slowly with alcohol?
Mhm.
No, well, no. Well, what are we well, like what are we talking about? Like you can't just pick the good ones and
Mhm.
make it work for your little scheme. Like this is life to me. Car accident happened. It doesn't mean a fucking thing. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. Life is just order and chaos and fucked up shit happens to good people and great things happen to terrible people. There's no rhyme or reason to any of this shit.
Mhm.
Car accident happens with my family. If I become the drinker, poor me, drug addict, that's what it becomes. If I try to make something good and I can help other people with their grief and I can talk about suicide ideation and mental illness awareness and I can do that for other people,
Yeah.
then that's what the car accident means. Then that's what it means. But like, let's not tell this guy who's been divorced 3 times that they needed to happen. He could have been a good husband the first try. He could have. A lot of people do. Like, but we do this weird thing in our heads where like we go through shit, we handle it well,
Mhm.
we learn and grow, and I don't know if it's our ego or what. And then we go back to that event and we're like, it was meant to happen. No, didn't need to happen at all, actually, but it did. What are you going to do
Mhm.
about it?
Mhm.
That's how I see it. Is that like tell me to work hard and keep going. I'll do it. Just tell me it wasn't supposed to happen and it's fucked up. Don't tell me it's okay. Don't tell me
Mhm.
it's fine and keep going. Just tell me it's fucked up. Can you
Mhm.
keep going? And I'll do it. But let's not like get delusional. Like let's
Mhm.
not like what are we? I don't get what we're saying half the time.
It's
So
interesting because I think people try to say their best, and I've had like friends that are therapists, like, like during this time, it would piss me off so bad when somebody said something that I'm like, ugh, it's like you're like, you've never even like visited France and you're telling me like where to go get the best croissants in the world. Like, be like, please go sit
yeah,
down. Like, no one asked. All you could do is just give me a hug and allow me to awkwardly throw up cry onto your bosom for like 10 minutes, reset my little day, and then off we
sorry,
go.
I love the verbiage of throw up cry.
Do you know what I mean?
I know exactly what that means, and it's
Yeah.
well said.
Yeah. It's like, but the thing for me when all this happened, it was like the world cracked open. I could no longer ignore the innocence that the innocence was gone that was clouding what was real. There are boogeymans around every corner. And I don't say this to like give people who are avoidant anxiety, but like I no longer have that privilege. The privilege that I had for those 35 years of me thinking like, oh, well, my dad woke up today, so nothing bad's going to happen. Like I had to like cheerlead myself into like, woohoo, everything's great. And then the minute that I couldn't escape it, it was like, oh, fuck. Like I've single handedly been doing this to myself because my dad's been ill for 20 years. He's had 100 surgeries. Like I've personally had to like wean him back to health throughout my entire childhood. Like there was never a moment where it was like speckly and rainbows and I could find the silver lining. That silver lining was denial. And it caused what I thought was me dealing with something for 20 years to be me literally just like dousing it in glitter and then like sticking it in the corner like a new like piece of art, like, oh, this is just like it's here, it's fine. And then when it was real, it wiped my world away. I felt like I got taken away in a tidal flood. And then it really made me realize people that haven't felt it are not going to know what to say. They're not going to know what to do. All they need to do, like the strangers that found you and your sister-in-law, is hold you. Let you just
Don't let them go into the street.
don't let them run into the street.
Yeah,
Like
like
until you've seen it, until you've done it yourself, there's no, you are out to lunch. You are gone. You are
Yeah.
not here, but you are here. It's like you're sleepwalking, but your hair's on fire and you're screaming. Like there's no rhyme or reason. And for people that are witnessing, they get very uncomfortable. They're like, oh my God, we got to make them stop. It's like, no, you don't. Form a circle. Keep them from sharp objects. They don't know what the fuck they're doing right now. They might as well be on PCP. Like your brain is scrambled.
Yeah.
And then every day after that, your only goal is love. Love, love, love. How can I love you today? Don't ask questions. Don't insert yourself. Offer, don't answer. Like just like let them have a quiet, safe space to just feel. I can't tell you how many times I was so thankful to, and not to like rub this in your face in any way, but if I wouldn't have had my husband, like my husband was your version of blue. Like if I didn't have him, I probably would have like done something to myself. And I've never been one to ideate in any fashion of hurting myself. But the pain, you don't understand what that is. You think you do, and you like toy around with the idea every now and then. Maybe you've had a breakup in your life. You're like, my life is over. And then you're like, oh, you silly little bitch. This was just the beginning. This was just this was a little bit of cheese on the plate for you to just get a taste of pure despair, because you will feel it at one point in your life. Like it is the purpose of life. Pain brings the joy. And it's terrible to be the person left to recognize that that pain only came because a person or many persons in your case are gone, but it still leaves you to have to live this life. And they would want you to live this life. And they would want you to, as you so beautifully got to discuss in Cancun, like you deserve every moment of this life that you have. And I am just from one to another, it is so beautiful to have watched your journey, to watch you evolving, although we know it's not a linear thing. This is a club you're in now for life. Uh, but to say like I'm proud to see someone just day to day doing what you're doing, it's beautiful. You are like living in motion, you know what I mean? And you could not be, and no one would blame you for it at all. It's
Yeah, but Sarah, you're the same thing.
mm, yeah,
So I hope you know that.
thank you. It's a weird club we're in, but it's a good one.
No one wants
If
to
we're
be
if
in
we
it.
gotta be here, we're here.
Exactly. Like no one wants to be in it, but if you're in it, you might as well be in it. Like, all right, this is my
Yeah.
tribe now. Like, let's roll with the depression.
Depression train. Guys, if you're really loving this conversation, and I'm sure it's an odd one, and I'm sure it wasn't one you thought you were going to have today,
The odder,
you
the
need,
better.
I'm sorry,
The odder, the better. I
the
think.
always, I like being open. It's real. I want,
Yeah.
I want to know the real shit. I don't want to know
Let's
the like
talk.
bookend notes. But if you are interested in learning more and just the 1090 method is beautiful. I love you and your co-host, your childhood best friends. It's so
Yeah.
cool to listen to you guys just like put your thoughts out there. Your philosophy is beautiful. I love hearing his perspective on life too. It's just, guys, we can all be kinder. We can all love a little harder. We can all like offer a little bit more grace and, empathy to others. And hopefully you don't have to deal with these things anytime soon, but just know they are coming. And as two friends here who want to have your back, do what you can to start working on those dark corners that you're looking away from now, because they're there. Um, I ask one final question of all my guests. Mason, how do you make your life rich?
Oh no way. Can I tell a quick story? It'll be super
You can
quick.
talk whatever you want. I have nowhere to be, so I just don't want to take you up all your time.
So like I love basketball growing up, and I'd always tell my dad, I'm like, take me to the church and rebound for me, and so I can get shots up. And so he's like, all right. So I was probably like 9, 10-year-old kid, and we're just at this church gym shooting shots. And I don't know if it's the first time I heard of Bill Gates or what, but I remember talking to my dad about like rich and like the richest man alive, like all this stuff. And my dad, he's a therapist. He's been a social worker his whole life, and he looks at me and he's like, Mason, like I'm the richest man in the world. I'm like, well, Dad, like we what are you talking about? Like we eat marshmallow mateys, not Lucky Charms. Like we get the knockoff Oreos. Like what are you talking about? No, we're not rich. Like middle class, but we're not rich. What are you talking
Mhm.
about? And he's like, I got your mom. You got the best mom. Like I have you. I have your two older brothers. I have your two older sisters. I'm the richest, happiest guy in the world. And he didn't say anything bad about guys who have money, or he didn't say don't chase fancy car. He didn't say any of that. He just
Mhm.
said, "Listen, idiot. This is what it means to be rich." And I grew up with that perspective, like, and it's very sad now and almost ironic. But I before the car accident with my family, I got this job at Nets on Fire, and I had Kortni and beautiful family with our kids. And I remember telling my dad, like, Dad, I think I'm the richest, happiest guy in the world. Like, and it was gone, it's taken. But yeah, I think that's what I think being rich is the relationships you have with the ones you love most, and are you happy when you're alone? If you have those two things, I, I don't know what you're complaining about. So that's what it means to me to be rich.
Beautiful. I love that so much. Mason, thank you so much for your story and your heart and your time. And guys, go check out the 1090 podcast. It's awesome. I love your content, by the way. You guys are just like, it's just getting better and better every episode. I love it. You can totally
Thank
see the progression of you guys. Like,
you. I
it's great. I
appreciate
love
that.
it. But thank you so much, Mason.
Thanks, Sarah.